Hello and welcome to the seventh installment of ColorectalLIVE from Johnson & Johnson Institute and Ethicon. I'm Richard Brady, a consultant colorectal surgeon at Newcastle Hospitals, and we've enjoyed a great series so far, and thank you very much for all of your feedback. Our guests really make the show, and we've been joined by some really impressive people over the last series, including Professor Shafi Ahmed, Pete Sagar, Gabriella Meusling, Gordon Carlson, Des Winter, and Susan Moog. Tonight, I'm really excited to be joined by Professor Dion Morton, OBE, consultant colorectal surgeon at University Hospitals Birmingham, Barling Professor of Surgery, head of the Academic Department of Surgery at the Institute of Cancer and Genomic Studies at the University of Birmingham, and co-director of the NIHR Global Surgery Unit. We'll speak to Dion about his career, practice-changing research, clinical interests, and his key role in collaborative research. So, Dion, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Richard, it's a pleasure.
Now, we'll be looking for your views tonight on some of our Twitter polls. They're up on the J&J Medical Devices UK Twitter channel now. So get involved and make sure that you head over to them, and there'll be some more details as we go through tonight's interview. Now, Dion, let's get to know you a little bit better. You're a consultant surgeon and professor of surgery at the University of Birmingham with an interest in cancer inheritance. Tell us about your background and the path that developed you as a surgeon.
Well, I grew up in London, in West End of London, and then went to medical school in Bristol, where I had a very enjoyable and happy 5 years. I met my wife-to-be there, and we actually quite quickly moved up to Birmingham afterwards, and that was really for lifestyle issues, and that was so that we could live together and we could train together in a large city. And actually, we were very lucky. That worked out really well. And we were able to bring up 4 children and continue our careers and complete our training in Birmingham. And that's where I was lucky enough to meet someone who was really a mentor for me, and Mark Goldman, who was my first consultant surgeon that I worked for. And it was he who advised me to go into molecular biology research. And I started my research as in a very exciting era when molecular biology was really taking off, and we started to identify genes that were causing cancer and understand inheritance of bowel cancer. And actually, it was that work that then, it was my research, interestingly, that drove my specialization in colorectal surgery because of my interest in inherited bowel cancer. And that's kind of taken me up to the present day.
Now, Dion, you trained amongst a generation who had generality in surgery like we don't experience in modern training with subspecialization. What were the good things, the bad things about training in such an environment?
I don't think, I don't really have bad memories. I always say to my trainees that I learned an awful lot actually from some surgeons who weren't as good as other surgeons, who weren't as good clinicians. And I think that the whole training experience was very positive for me. I actually think that's a great strength of our training, is the variety of places that you visit, and you're able to get experience from different units. And I think that remains today. What has changed in the training is, of course, the super specialization that we get at an early stage. I think that has strengths and weaknesses. I actually did a couple of years as a vascular trainee, and I did a year or so as a transplanter, and I did upper GI surgery and Whipple's resections and liver resections, as well as training as a colorectal specialist. And I think that actually gives you a breadth that allows you to see and learn from different disciplines. And I think the risk of super specialization, which is good because the surgeons can do particular operations well, is a disadvantage because I think that you don't learn from other disciplines in the way that we were able to in the past. So it's strengths and weaknesses.
Right. Dion, you'll have come across in your career probably tens of thousands of different types of surgeons, trainees, consultants. Are surgeons born or bred? Is there particular characteristics that set us apart from other fields of medicine?
So this is the genetics question. It's nurture or nature. Is it inherited or acquired? I'm going to sit on the fence on this one, Richard. I think it's a mixture. Certainly, I am classified by my family and some friends as a surgeon who was born a surgeon, who was had those characteristics. But actually, I think that surgery itself molds the surgeon. So I think that surgery is very intimate. You live very close to your successes, and most importantly, you live very close to your failures. You have to manage them very carefully, and that's what differentiates really surgery from most physicianly practice. That we see our results immediately, and I think it's that immediacy that attracts people to surgery, but it's also that immediacy that molds people as they progress their career in surgery.
Right, Dion, you've got a global reputation in research, and I wanted to understand what was it that started you off in that environment? What was the spark that lit the fire of research in your belly?
The fire was lit by patients, Richard, and I think it's, research is ultimately the desire to benefit patients beyond those patients that you're immediately treating. And I think that's what really directed me towards research. Again, it was my mentor, Mark Goldman, who encouraged me to go into molecular biology because it was a burgeoning field at the time. And that was a really exciting period to go into a research area that was really growing and developing. And I would recommend anyone to look at areas that are undergoing rapid change as places to go and start your research. But as I progressed through my career, I would say that it was being able to benefit patients became more closer to my heart. And that's why I progressed into more clinical research and then worked through the collaboratives, as you mentioned.
Now, research obviously comes with a certain skill, a different type of skill that is required than in surgery potentially. But are there research skills that you think improve surgeons, and on that basis, should all surgeons do research?
You're pushing my buttons here, Richard. I think that research is an essential component of providing good surgical care. How can we be a consultant surgeon? How can we be a leader in our field if we're not interested in improving the outcomes from our patients? I think it's an absolutely core value. So if there's something I would change in our training, it's actually I would make surgical research mandatory as an essential part of all training. Because I think as you progress through your career, you need to be able to bring those benefits to your patients. And we should be constantly working to benefit our patients. So I think it's essential. I think it should be mandated.
Thanks, Dion. So this brings us to the first poll of the evening. Do you think at home that surgical trainees need mandatory training in research methodology? We'd like to know what you think, so please head over to the J&J Medical Devices UK and I Twitter channel now and cast your vote. Do surgical trainees need mandatory training in research methodology? Yes, mandatory. No, or B should be optional. No, C, no, and D, don't know. We'll repeat those questions later on and also reveal the results of the poll before the end of tonight's show. Dion, getting back to you, what do you think the future areas of colorectal research growth will be in the next 5 years?
I think that that's a very exciting question, Richard. I don't know if your listeners have read the report from the Royal College of Surgeons, but on the future of surgery, but it came out just over a year ago, and it was run by Richard Kerr. I think it's a fascinating read, and I would recommend it to anyone. I think that we are going through a transformational period in surgery. We're not going to evolve surgery. I think surgery is going to completely change over the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's a really exciting time to be a surgeon. I would recommend it to anyone at the moment. What are those changes? Well, I mean, every aspect of surgery is going to change. But I think that they can be categorized into 3 broad areas. I think one is we're going to make surgery safer. Big, dangerous, hazardous procedures are going to be more controlled and are going to be made safer for the patients. And that's largely going to come about by minimal access surgery and robotics. And that is going to really change patient outcomes. The second area is in the virtual reality and graphics. I think that this is going to transform training. And I think that we're going to reduce the amount of training that's taken place with patients. And surgical trainees are going to learn in a virtual reality forum. And I think this is a fantastic progress. My generation of surgeons, we learned on patients. And I think that anyone would say that that's not a good thing. I think surgeons should be an expert at a procedure when they actually start to undertake it on patients. So I think that that's the second big transformation in training. The third one is the big data, genomics. I think that's equally exciting. And that's about selecting the right patient for the right procedure. It's about accurately risk stratifying patients. I think that we undertake too many procedures on patients with very marginal gains for the patient, and we don't adequately assess the risk to the patient for those procedures. So I think that would be the third big transformation, Richard.
Great. Now, we've just heard what Dion thinks about the future developments in colorectal research in the next 5 years. So we'd like to know, obviously, what you think and whether you agree. Head over to the J&J Medical Devices UK Twitter channel. And what do you think will be the most important surgical development in the next 5 years? A, patient safety or safe surgery. B, simulation and training. And C, big data and AI. I'll reveal the results with the others at the end of the show tonight. Right, Dion, I'm going to get back to you and comment on the fact that you recently received a Queen's Birthday Honours Award and an OBE in relation to your work in surgical innovation. Can you tell us from where you are on the pedestal looking out across the UK savannah, are we doing well in surgical innovation and could we be doing better?
Well, thank you for mentioning my recent award, but I would just like to emphasize that I think that that was really for the enormous progress in the surgical community across the United Kingdom, really in leading a transformation in surgical research and innovation. So I see that as a great credit to all of the leaders and innovators across the United Kingdom who have really led surgical research over the last decade and beyond. What do I think about innovators? I think innovation in the United Kingdom is fantastic. I think the NHS is a brilliant platform for innovating in. We have one unified health service that can really evaluate and introduce transformation for patients very, very rapidly. So it's a fantastic platform. And I think we should also credit the development of the National Institute of Health Research, the NIHR. I think that has transformed the ability for the NHS to evaluate and develop innovation for patients. And those systems are really, they are exemplars and they're the envy of the world. Of course, there are still challenges, but I think the main challenges are really around governance. I think it's the setting up and the development of research that the governance is very rigid and very unresponsive to patient need, and that needs to change. But that's a worldwide problem. I think it is interesting, actually, that the COVID pandemic has had such an impact on those processes and demonstrated that they can be rapidly improved and we can be much more responsive. And I do hope that those changes we've seen over the last 6 months, introduced because of the pandemic, hope that they can be sustained and they can introduce further change going forward.
I think you're right. The remarkable efficiencies that we now see within research infrastructure have demonstrated that we can deliver high quality research efficiently, quickly, with less red tape. And some of the work that's been undertaken by COVID Surge, PanSurge, and a number of the other collaborators has been so impressive in its delivery during this period of time. Now, Dion, can I ask you, how do you identify a surgical innovator? I mean, there will be consultants or trainees who have innovation as part of their DNA. It courses through their blood. How do you identify them, and are there traits that we should look out for in our trainees?
I'm so tempted to go back to the nurture or nature again, Richard, but I won't go there. I think that innovation is a multifaceted process, and no single person can carry out all of the different uh, parts of that process to a high level. So any innovation needs teamwork, and it's the ability to lead a team and develop a team that's really required. I would say that is the essential skill. And when I say lead, I don't mean to tell people what to do. I mean the ability to bring people with them and to create a shared learning and development environment. I think that is essential. If I look for anything in people, it's those skills with the energy, enthusiasm to do it. Because I think if you are leading these projects, it is time consuming, it is tiring, stressful even. I think it's addictive when you've done it, because it is a very exciting and wonderful thing to take part in. But you need some energy and enthusiasm to keep it going over time.
Dion, if we get back to one of the most, the innovation that you're probably best known for, that of collaborative research in the UK initially and then globally. That seems like a complete field change to the previous comic opera of surgical research. What were the challenges that you faced during those decades of introducing that innovation and those changes to the surgical mindset?
I remember it well, although it's a long time ago. There were real challenges, and the challenges were from my peers. It was the grey-haired older surgeon who was uncertain about the direction of travel. I think there were two schools of thought. One school of thought was that actually carrying out big trials across different centres for surgery was impractical and impossible and couldn't really be delivered. And the second school was the view that actually it was all about the personal series, the personal cohort series of procedures that would demonstrate excellence and could be shared. It took some time, and really it was the trainees who overcame those, I would say, prejudices. That's a bit strong, but they were prejudices. And the trainees showed that we could carry out collaborative research, we could carry out trials across multiple centres. And they started doing that, if you remember, back in the West Midlands, and it was the registrars in the West Midlands that kicked it off. And then that grew across the country, and then it grew across the world. And now there are trainee-led collaboratives running research in Australia and in many countries around the world. And we've just seen, as you mentioned, the response to the pandemic through groups like COVID Surge, led by Anil Bangu, has created an incredible research community across the world to deliver benefit to patients.
Well, thanks, Dion. And don't forget, we love to hear from you out there. So if you've got questions for Dion, please put them online on our social media using the hashtag Colorectal Research, or ColorectalLIVE. Now, can I ask you about your work in global surgery, Dion? What is the philosophy behind global surgery, and how do we make a success within that field?
The philosophy, I think that the philosophy is really around equitable access and equitable sharing of research opportunities. So it's building partnerships across the world that can work together. I think some people think of global health as a one-way street where you're going to help people in less well-off countries. And I think that that is a mistake. I think that actually global health is about building communities that learn together and learn from each other. And I see it very much as a two-way street. We can learn an enormous amount from our surgical colleagues around the world, and we can introduce it to benefit our patients. And really, if I could be honest, it's the same lesson that we learnt in the early days of the collaborative research, building teams with equal investment into benefiting their patients and learning from each other to deliver that. That's been a fantastic experience and a great challenge, but a very enjoyable one.
Dion, can I ask you, when you were building the global surgery unit and its work globally, are there particular challenges that you meet in relation to cultural or political challenges across the globe that are unique to a global surgical program or delivery of research?
Yes, but I don't think really they're political or even cultural differences. It's more the governance structure and being able to overcome the barriers to research in different countries and different research environments. And I've been surprised at the enthusiasm and energy of surgeons in terms of overcoming those barriers and delivering it. I would also have to credit my own wider team in Birmingham. They've got a fantastic institutional memory now of how to overcome governance issues and roll out research in different countries and deliver that research effectively and make sure that it's of a high quality. I think actually it's been a fantastic experience to watch that happen. And the big advantage that we've seen in the last year is because we work in so many different continents and countries, we've actually been able to continue research in some areas where the pandemic hasn't hit and then come back to other areas when the pandemic has quietened down. And that's actually allowed us to continue the research and to learn from each other.
A really remarkable build of cross-border growth within knowledge, Dion, and you and the team should be very proud of your work to date. Now, we come to a part of the interview which I know you've been entirely excited about for weeks. That is our quite quick-fire questions. These are single-sentence answers only, please. So what has been your single best day at work?
I don't do single-sentence answers, Richard. You know that. My single best day, well, I think it's got to be research. So it would be when trials come back with positive results that will change practice. I remember the first collaborative trial with a positive result, the DREAMS trial and the Rossini trial when they came back. And my own work, going back to Foxtrot and introducing neoadjuvant care for colon cancer. Very exciting. Those were the best days.
And you are obviously highly inspirational to an entire generation of surgeons. Who inspires you? You've mentioned your mentor previously. Are there others globally that inspire you in how you behave or in your aims or goals?
Yeah, I think it's people who build teams and widen horizons. I mean, you don't really need to look further than perhaps Barack Obama nowadays as a very inspiring leader and a team builder. And historically, great leaders such as Gandhi, in terms of transformation and leadership. I think those would be the people that have inspired me.
Good choices. Now, can you tell me about your favorite saying or a wisdom that you like to relate to people?
Well, I don't do wisdom, Richard, but others do. I think Richard Horton, you quoted him earlier. He's the Lancet editor, and he gave rise to the term the comic opera of surgical research, and that inspired a generation to stand up and change that practice. So I think Richard Horton gave us the inspiration and certainly changed surgical practice across the world. But in a more serious or more global, perhaps, I go back to Barack Obama. I'd say, the ability, he's a great team builder. And one of his phrases, I think, ordinary people can do extraordinary things if they work together. And I think that I really believe that. I think life is teamwork, and we can do greater things together than individually.
Absolutely. I suppose if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Now, can you tell me what's the worst piece of advice that you've ever been given?
do an interview with you. No, that's not fair. Come on. No, seriously. I think that it's people encourage people to focus down and know where you're going and have a single direction. I think it's rubbish. I think that people need to grow like plants and trees, and they need to move forward and be inspired by new visions and new hopes and aspirations. So I've changed what I've done over years. And I'm delighted to have been able to take on completely different directions and challenges. And it's been really exciting.
I have to say, we were very disappointed here at ColorectalLIVE that you didn't mention the interview as the best day in your career, Dion, but maybe, we'll try next time, harder. Next time. Now, can you tell us and our audience, how do you switch off? What is it that you do to relax?
Yeah, I think exercise. I play tennis, and I also go surfing, and we do these as a family, and we all do it. So it's very competitive, but it does take your mind off work. You can't run around and exercise and think about work at the same time.
Dion, can you tell me, obviously you've made massive changes in surgical research. What is it that you would most like to be known for generally through your career?
I think it is around team building. I think I'd like to be known as someone perhaps who tries to bring the best out of others and to transform care and benefit patients by building teams and bringing the best out of those teams. Yeah.
Well, great answers, Dion. And can I just tell you, this has been a fascinating interview, and thank you very much for spending time with us. Earlier, we asked you at home to get involved in our Twitter polls, and now it's time to find out the results. On the topic of surgeons and research, we asked you at home if you thought that surgical researchers and trainees needed mandatory training in research methodology. And the answers to those are that 65%, yes, that should be mandatory. 16% thought it should be optional, 10% no, and 9% didn't know. And Dion, what is it about those results? Can I ask you to comment on those results? What do you think about the audience's view there?
Actually, they're amazing. I mean, I'm afraid I'm old enough to remember that 10 years ago, if you did that poll, I promise you it would be the other way up. It would be 65% would say no. So that's a remarkable change. But I would also say that there's still work to do, because I think that all surgeons should recognize that research is an essential part of their activity. Sir Isaac Newton, it was his quote that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's how we progress surgical care, is by researching and improving what we're doing.
Okay, and in the second of our polls this evening, we were talking about surgical research and development over the next 5 years. And as Dion had said, there were three major areas of development. Patient safety, I understand 40% of the audience agreed with him. 29% said simulation and training, and 31% said big data or artificial intelligence. Dion, what do you think about that?
I think the audience are right. I think they're all important, and I wouldn't know what would be the most important. I think the one that will be the biggest change, which isn't quite the question, the biggest change will be in training and simulation, because that's going to really change the whole of surgical training. So we're going to be able to online judge whether someone can or cannot do a procedure, and until they can do it, they won't be allowed into the operating theatre to carry it out on patients. And that means that surgeons will actually own their own training. So they will be able to accelerate their training and take their training at a speed that they're comfortable with. So that'll be a real transformation, Richard.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, Dion. It's been a real pleasure tonight. And I have to say, the whole team at ColorectalLIVE are very grateful for your time and thoughts this evening. So we are going to say goodbye this year. This is the last of our ColorectalLIVE interviews. But thanks to all of our fascinating guests, and thanks again to you for watching and getting involved in the show. You can watch back our previous episodes by searching social media channels for #ColorectalLIVE. And please keep following us on our social channels as we keep up to date with our plans next year for potentially exploring further interviews. So as I knock off this year, and I look forward to saying goodbye, but until next time, for #ColorectalLIVE.